That's where there are different customs. There's some Chassidic groups that children wear it from when they're bar mitzvah. Some Chassidic groups that even younger children wear it. In Chabad, we only wear it. The men wear it after they're married.
Who wears it before bar mitzvah?
Certain Chassidim, maybe it's no.
What?
You're saying there is no such group?
I don't know. I've never heard of that. I know that Chassidic people like wear it from after bar mitzvah.
For bar mitzvah, right?
But before, I've never seen or heard.
Well, maybe people do it as a matter, like everything else, a matter of chinuch, of training.
Rabbi, I'm going to assume that it's only if you're wearing the coat, like the black coat, do you wear?
No.
Oh.
Everybody, even if they're wearing a jacket or they're not even wearing a jacket, even they're just in a shirt, they'll put on the gargle. So one part of it is that if you're going to Hashem to speak to Hashem and you're speaking to a king, so in essence, you should be really approaching Hashem in a way that's different than everything else you're doing during the day. So the right thing to do is to wear a special garment. There were some people that had a special garment that they put on when they went to daven. Again, practically, for most people, that's almost impossible. At work and here and there. But the belt, even though looks like a little nothing, but from a Torah perspective, it's considered a garment. Where do we see that? In the Beis Hamikdash, both the Kohen and the Kohen Gadol, that was one of the garments that they wore, was a belt. So it means according to Torah, it does have significance, it has importance, and therefore, by putting on the gartel, that's sort of a way of putting something on special for prayer, preparing for prayer. The other reason that it says is that the purpose of putting on the gartel, and that's also perhaps the explanation why the Kohen wore the gartel, is to make a separation between the upper part of the body, which has the heart and the brain and the faculties that are more important, and the lower part of the body, and to make that separation. So the reason why Chassidim, then why doesn't everybody do that if that's the case? And I guess it goes back to the original point that we made, that by Chassidim, the inyan of prayer is top priority. In other words, of course, studying Torah is important, and doing all this is important. Prayer is looked upon as, remember we said it's like the backbone. The backbone is the bone that's, in order for the learning to be proper, in order for the mitzvah to be proper, it's only when there's really truly a deeper bond, an emotional bond with Hashem, and the time to develop that emotional bond to Hashem is in davening. So that's why we find different things that Chassidim do in regards to the davening, because there's so much more emphasis on the davening, and we look at the davening as top priority because the davening is sort of the key to everything else. This will determine how everything else will be. Like for example, when we have on the list at number 3, the idea of going to the mikveh, that men go to the mikveh before davening. Everyone would understand. If you go to the mikveh before davening, it's some sort of a purification. It makes you more, I guess, spiritually alert and tuned and conscious. And so why doesn't everybody do it? And again, the same thing is because by Chassidim, the davening is looked upon as top priority, and this is the part of the day that will determine what the entire rest of the day will look like. So therefore, we put much more emphasis into, as much as possible, enhancing davening. So one of them is going to the mikveh. One of them is the idea of wearing the gartel, so that my davening will be on a whole different level. So I'm going to skip for a second. Later, Shabbos they daven later. During the week they daven later. Of course, people who have jobs that start early, so they daven early. But why do Chassidim daven later? Also the same thing. In order for the davening to have the proper effect, first of all, it says in the Shulchan Aruch that before a person daven, they should stop, pause, and think about the greatness of Hashem. In fact, what it says is to think about the greatness of Hashem and the lowliness of a person, and then you start davening. So for Chassidim, it's to learn a little bit of Chassidus before davening, and that gets me into the place that when I'm davening, I'm able to concentrate more, be focused more, and not just about what it is that I need, because there's much more to davening than requesting your needs. And again, this is one of the differences that is between those that study Chassidus and those that don't. That those that don't study Chassidus, the davening is more of a time where I'm looking out to ask Hashem for what I need, which is also part of expressing my belief in Hashem. But the focus is asking for Hashem to fulfill my needs. The Chassidic approach to davening is that to go more into the deeper dimension of davening. It's not about fulfilling my needs as much as it is. This is the time to develop love and fear and emotion, that I have not just a dedication to do what needs to be done, but I'm dedicated to develop a emotional bond with Hashem. So therefore, in essence, if a person studies Chassidus and then goes to daven, even though the davening might be later, but being that the studying Chassidus is a preparation for the davening, and that's an orientation for the davening, so in a sense, the davening has already began earlier. Now, naturally, people sometimes raise the question, isn't there a time set aside that you're not allowed to daven later than that time? So the truth is like this, that even if Chassidim have a custom, and even if there's a source for it in Kabbalah, I think I mentioned this in the other class, nevertheless, if there is no source for any source whatsoever to conduct themselves in that way, according to halacha, then we won't follow that. In other words, halacha overrides anything that's written in Kabbalah. Because whatever it says in Kabbalah is something which is for more lofty people and on their level, but the practical thing that's an obligation for every person is to follow halacha. So it has to be, and there is a source and an opinion in halacha that if a person could daven later, if they feel that that's going to allow him the time, that'll be able to focus on davening, and the davening will have much more feeling to it, and more kavanah, more intention, and so on. So therefore, we choose to make a better preparation before davening, and then do the davening. So even if it's later, so it's not perfect in the sense that it's in the best time, but it'll be better in quality. Maybe if not in quantity, that it's the right technical time that it's supposed to be. Yeah.
I'm always kind of confused about that because I know, like, on Monday, like, you have to say Shema by a certain time. So, like, how does that work?
So even though men daven later, they will say the Shema before davening.
Like, they haven't, like, in mind, say this now, daven later?
Yeah, in other words, even if someone is going to start, let's say Shabbos, the minyan begins at 10. And sometimes Shabbos, the time that Shema ends is like 9:30. And the same thing every day, summer, winter. So the custom is that that's the halacha. You have to say the Shema before the time. So therefore, we would say the Shema earlier, before the time. And you could say the Shema. The mitzvah Shema could be done without the rest of the davening, and then you say the Shema again when it's in davening.
Is that why there's the Shema in the first part of the morning prayer?
I'm not sure if that's the reason, because there are a lot of people that they just daven early every day, and it's not necessary. But
like, is that considered like you said Shema?
Right, yeah. Really, you're supposed to say 3 portions, but the first portion is the main portion. In fact, there's some that go even ahead, and because the Shema has in it the mitzvah of tefillin, so it's not appropriate to read the Shema without tefillin. So go a step further, which means though, before davening, they're gonna put on the tefillin, say the Shema, and then when they daven, they put on the tefillin the second time. Let's say, as an example, the Bachram's Yeshiva, they start studying Chassidus at 7:30 in the morning. and they finish 9 or 9:30. Then the davening starts 9:30 or 10. So they would put on tefillin earlier than 7:30, say the Shema, usually bite into something, have a coffee, because they're going to start davening much later, and then they will study Chassidus, and then they will go do the davening.
So, but in other like circles or non-Chassidim, they don't like that first Shema that you're talking about. That's when they do all of their davening before.
They do everything before, right?
So they.
In other words, if it's a time that the Shema is by 9:30, they'll start davening by 8 o'clock or 7:30. So in some communities, you have the Chabad guy going to shul with his talis and film, walking slowly, and the other people are coming home ready to eat their Shabbos meal.
Right.
Because they're keeping different hours.
Or like if you go to 770 at like whatever noon or 1, and there's somebody filling, if whatever, I don't know, someone else saw that, or they think that he's like breaking the law.
Some people would think, some people not. In other words, the truth is, it's not the most sort of appropriate thing to do. The most appropriate thing to do is to daven the first thing in the morning. And I don't know if every single person that's there 1 o'clock has been learning Chassidus from 10 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock. It might be questionable. So what happens is it starts off at, you're supposed to be learning Chassidus before, and some people then become a little bit lenient with the time. But really, in essence, a person should daven in the morning. It should be the first thing that I do. Remember, we spoke that there's even a question if you're allowed to eat before davening. And the only reason why you should be allowed to eat before davening is because we want to be able to daven in a smoother way without feeling hunger, and that interferes with my kavod, with my intention. Yeah. What? Gartel, yeah. Where did it start from? Most of these things started with the Baal Shem Tov. That's probably where it started. I didn't do the research, but I'm assuming because we see all those that follow the Baal Shem Tov are doing the same thing. So it's probably started with the Baal Shem Tov. Yeah.
Are you allowed to? I don't think you're allowed to daven until daven Shabbos until sunset. Is that true?
So again, there is a time, the real time.
But is it allowed?
It's allowed, yeah. There are people that wouldn't daven past a certain time, and definitely not past noon, which means if something happened and they didn't get around davening until noon, they won't daven Shachris that day. And what they would do is they would daven 2 Shemona Esrei for Mincha. The halach is if I miss Shachris, let's say there was some sort of a emergency, I couldn't daven, and now it's sundown, I can't daven anymore. So you would daven 2 Shemona Esrei for Mincha. What if a person missed Mincha, then you daven 2 Shemona Esrei for Ma'ariv? What if you miss Ma'ariv, you daven 2 Shemona Esrei Shachris the next morning? So you can only make up for it by the next prayer. So there are some people that the timing part to them is so strict to the point that if it's not going to be the right time, they won't even daven, and they'll daven 2 Shemona Esrei for Mincha. By Chassidim, they'll choose to rather daven late than not to skip the davening completely, because halachically there is a lenient opinion that you can go until sundown. Yeah.
It is like I always used to daven a chakras, and then sometimes I don't know, I will have late, like at 6 p.m. whatever. That's like if I daven in Ma'ariv, I should daven in like 2 times, like Shemona Esrei was like.
I don't know if it applies to women because you don't have that chiyuv like a man to daven every single prayer. You have a chiyuv to daven one of the prayers a day, so you don't have to do that.
So I just like replace, let's say, for say Ma'ariv.
You're asking if you could do that.
Okay, so
Maybe.
I should not like say by saying.
I have a good idea for you. Tomorrow's Friday. The halacha teacher show up. And the halacha teacher. You're welcome for my sage advice. Okay, do you want to pass this around? Yesterday, when we spoke about the Alter Rebbe's nusach, Alter Rebbe's nusach of davening, We said the Alter Rebbe didn't put it, and those who wrote the Siddur of the Arizal weren't focusing so much on the liturgy, on the actual text, as much as they were focused on the kavanah. Oh, I forgot to bring in the Siddur. Okay. We'll make up for it. Tomorrow I'll bring in 2 Siddur. Okay. So you'll look in that Siddur, you see names of Hashem. It's mainly focused on different names to Hashem to have in mind when you say these words, those words, the other words. In the Alter Rebbe Siddur, you hardly have it. One of the single places where you do have it is this sheet that I'm giving out now. And in fact, it's a Chassidic custom. And this is another thing with the difference between Chabad and other Chassidim. By other Chassidim, I think Sephardic Jews also, they will say this before every single mitzvah that they observe that day. They'll say it before Tefillin, they'll say it before the Talis, they'll say it before the counting of the Omer, they'll say it before benching. And so let's see what it says here and what it means. And also, why did the Alter Rebbe choose to only put it in once, not the rest of the day for other mitzvahs? So these are the words. Let's look at the English. For the sake of the union of the Holy One, blessed be He, with the Shekhinah. Now on the surface, what's that supposed to mean? The Holy One, blessed be He, is the Shekhinah. To unite the name Yud-K with Vav-K in a perfect union in the name of all of Israel. So, what this means is as follows. The word HaKadosh Baruch Hu is found all over in the teachings of our Torah, and the Gemara, and the Roshim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the word Shekhinah is always found. And of course, when you read that, it's interchangeable. Shekhinah means Hashem, Kadosh Baruch Hu means Hashem. But when you go into the more specifics, especially in Chassidus and in Kabbalah, these are 2 separate levels. Again, when you say Hashem, someone who's not familiar with Chassidus, Hashem is Hashem, and that's it. When you learn Chassidus, you know Hashem is the essence of everything, of course. But when you say Hashem's presence and Hashem's light, it could be Atzilus, it could be Bria, it could be Yitzir. There are different worlds. In each world, there are different spheros, different levels. So in general, and we mentioned this the other day, that in general, there's in the spiritual realm, there's masculine and there's feminine. And these are the 2 names, Kutchabrichu and Shchinte. The name HaKadosh Baruch Hu generally is alluding to the masculine place in the spiritual realm. The name Shechina is referring to and alluding to the feminine place in the spiritual realm. And the same with the names of Hashem. We know the full name of Hashem is a Yud, a K, and a Vav. But the truth is, there are also 2 separate names. Yud K is one name, and Vav K is another name. In fact, there are certain places in davening, if you pay attention, you'll see that Hashem's name is written as just Yud K. There are 2 names. And the 2 names are similar, that Yud K corresponds to Kutchabrichu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the first, and Vav K corresponds to the Shekhinah. And when we observe a mitzvah, what we're doing, the way it's explained in Kabbalah, is we're creating a union. We're causing a union between the masculine and the feminine. We're causing a union between Kutchabrichu and Shechinte. And just like here in the physical realm, when there is a union, meaning a marriage between husband and wife, ultimately they bring children into the world, and the children bring children, and it brings much more people into the world through this union. Spiritually, when we bring together two levels like Kutchabrichu and Shechinte, as a result of that, there's a creation of new godly light in the world that wasn't there before. Every time we do a mitzvah, I don't know if you ever heard the expression where they say they have in mind yichudim. Yichudim means union, because that's really the essence of all mitzvahs. Yes, there are differences, what's exactly happening with one mitzvah and what's different with another mitzvah. So obviously, if there's 613 mitzvahs, there must be 613 different kinds of unions. But in general, it's the union between Kadosh Baruch Hu and His Shechina, and the Yud-K and the Vav-K. And that's basically, in different words, the masculine and the feminine. So being that when we daven, or when we do a mitzvah, there's many ways of explaining the purpose of the mitzvah, but more than anything else, when you study Chassidus and in the Chassidic world, you're focused on what is it accomplishing spiritually. Otherwise, you can be focusing on what does this mitzvah do to me emotionally? What does it do to me intellectually? How does it enhance my life? How does it enhance my family life? And it's all true. But when you study Chassidus, you're much more focused on the deeper dimension. What does it do spiritually? And the answer is, spiritually, it creates a union. So I guess when we do the mitzvah, we say these words before, number one, it makes us more aware. And number two, it has more of an effect that union should be in a more powerful way, have a greater impact because I had that in mind. If a person says the words without having the intention, it'll probably also happen, but it won't have the same impact on the world. So then how come the Alter Rebbe doesn't have it in the Siddur right before every single mitzvah? So the Alter Rebbe himself, I think, explains it in a Maimer, and he said that in essence, this is the true meaning of the bracha we make before a mitzvah. It's really the same thing. When you make a bracha, before you do a mitzvah, you say, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvayso v'tzivanu. That's like lahadlik ner u'Shabbos. So you start off the same thing with any mitzvah. When you count the Omer, Baruch atah Hashem, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvayso v'tzivanu. Hashem sanctifies it with his mitzvahs, and he told us to count the Omer. And he told us to eat matzah. And he told us this part of the bracha is always the same. So the deeper meaning of the bracha is like this: Baruch atah Hashem, bless you, be you, Hashem. Elokeinu melech haolam. These two names of Hashem, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the name Elokim is the same thing in a different setting. The name Yud Kei Vav Kei is masculine, and the name Elokim is feminine. The name Yud Kei Vav Kei corresponds to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the name Elokim corresponds to Shechina. And when we say the bracha, we're actually saying the same thing and having in mind the same thing about this union. So let me just add by asking another question. Did you ever think about the question, how does it make sense that we're blessing Hashem? He's the source of all blessing. He's the creative universe. And I say, Hashem, I want to give you a bracha. Ridiculous. What do you mean giving him a bracha? How does that make any sense?
He wants us to, no?
I know he wants us to, but how could we make sense of it for ourselves? So what?
It's like a relationship, isn't it? So he shows that he cares for us by all these.
So if a person says to Hashem, Hashem, I love you, that I understand, but I bless you. Like, what am I giving him? Hashem gives me a blessing, he gives me parnasa, he gives me a blessing for health. What am I giving him when I say I bless you? I'm blessing Hashem that it should be a good God. What?
We elevate that food to the next level. We turn the apple into an actual.
So how's that to do with the word with bracha?
I don't know, enlighten us.
Okay, so
Drops of knowledge.
here's the lightning. The simple meaning probably is that when I say to Hashem, I bless you, it's more about, it means more, the connotation is more, I'm praising you, I'm thanking you. That's what it means. Like, say someone does a favor to you and you say, you should be blessed. Really, what you're really saying is, I really appreciate what you did. I really acknowledge what you did. I have so much gratitude to you. And therefore you say, Hashem should bless you. So when we say to Hashem Baruch, really, it's another way. In fact, in a lot of places in davening, it says, Brachot v'hodaot, which means blessings and praise. So the blessing is another way of saying praise. But what's explained in Chassidus more than that is that the word Baruch in Hebrew has another meaning. Anyone aware of the other meaning of the word Baruch? So Baruch could mean to draw down. I'm talking about in Gemara, in Chumash, bringing something down could also mean Baruch. There's the pasuk in Chumash, for example, that Eliezer was sent on a mission by Avram, and he came to Lavan. And then there's this word in the Chumash, by Yavrech es Agmalim. He brought down the camels. You know how camels sit down. He brought them down. And the word is the same blessing, Beis, Reish, Chaf. Or in Halacha, there's a question about if you have a vineyard and you bring down one of the branches. It says, Hamavrich es Hagefen. If someone brings down a branch from a vineyard, vineyard. So what does it mean spiritual? Baruch, we're actually saying and verbalizing Hashem's light should be drawn down to us. But if you think of the specific wording, we're saying Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu. What we're really saying is we want to create a union here between Hashem and Elokeinu. The light of Hashem, the light of Hakadosh Baruch Hu should be drawn down to Shekhinah, which means the same exact thing. We're creating a union between the masculine and the feminine, between Havaya and Elokim, and that's the same as between Yudke and Vavke, and the same as Hakadosh Baruch Hu and Shekhinah. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, really, he wanted that when a chassid makes a bracha, you should be thinking about this is the meaning of the bracha. So once a day we say it explicitly, clearly, and then for the rest of the day we'll say it in a way that it will be included in my intention of the bracha. If you would walk into a Chassidic shul, let's say before Sfiras Omer, before they start counting, everyone says L'Shem Yichud, and the walls are shaking. The walls are like shaking from the excitement because we're getting ready to do a mitzvah. And they would say this L'Shem Yichud. And in Chabad, we also do the Shem Yichud, but instead it's part of the bracha. It's the same intention that we're now going to bring together Yudke and Vavke, Havaya and Elokim, and so on. So when you wake up in the morning and say, Baruch Ata Hashem Pakei Chivrim, the simple meaning is, thank you Hashem for giving me sight. Thank you Hashem for giving me a straight back. Thank you Hashem for giving me the ability to walk. The deeper meaning is, Baruch Ata Hashem, I'm drawing down Hashem's light. It should manifest in this world, and it should manifest in a way that I'll have healthy legs, that I have healthy hands, that I'll have healthy back, and everything else that follows. So that's what Baruch means. And that explains how it makes sense that we're giving Hashem a bracha. Still doesn't answer another question, which is not part of the class, is how does it make sense that we're praising Hashem? I can understand somebody performs and everybody walks over and compliments them, did a great job. So we're praising Hashem. Hashem, you're so great, you're amazing. He needs our praises. And if he does, we're the ones that his praise means something. Like we're totally insignificant. Our praises mean something to Hashem. He needs praises. So that's another question. Really doesn't relate to our class. That's a question about davening in general. But if you really can't fall asleep for the next 2 days, I'll go into it. If you could fall asleep, then we can skip it. There are Maimorim that go into explaining. In fact, there's a Maimor in this week's parsha because in this week's parsha it talks about the fact that if a tree grows in Israel, you're not allowed to benefit from the tree the first 3 years, and only the 4th year you take it to Yerushalayim, you eat the food there, and you praise Hashem. So in this week's parsha in Chassidus, it touches on this subject. What's the purpose of praising Hashem? Why is it necessary? What does it accomplish? To be.
Continue.
Very good. How did you guess?
Rabbi, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there like a source, either or Kabbalah, as to why the gartel is like folded like that? Like the way that the gartel is tied.
It must be something. Really, in essence, let's say a man forgot his gartel. In essence, a regular belt could serve as a gartel. A scarf could serve as a gartel. But first of all, the advantage of this is dedicated for davening. It's the garment I dedicate for davening. And there must be a reason. There must be a reason. I don't know what the reason is. In fact, I remember when the Rebbe would walk in the shul and he would put on his gartel. He would put it on, and he would also know that the two parts that are hanging down should be perfectly aligned.
I'm sure it's connected to something.
Right, not one should be longer, one shorter. I would focus on it. Everyone watch. I would concentrate. Okay.
Thank you.